I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's talk about Justin Trudeau, Canada, Chrystia Freeland, who was Canada's foreign minister. She's now been replaced. She's going to be essentially, from what I understand, the number 2 person in Canada. But the significance of this video is the fact that perhaps the most well-known neoliberal government in existence today, which is still clinging on to power, which is Justin Trudeau's government in Canada, which just recently won re-elections by a narrow margin, but still won. They are coming to the realization that under Freeland's tenure at the foreign ministry, they really messed up a lot of relationships with a lot of countries, from China to Russia to India, even the United States. And this is an interesting video topic. It came to our attention via an article via Matthew Ehret, who also wrote it on Strategic Culture Foundation, and then we also republished it on the Duran. And the title of the article, Alexander, reads like this in the excerpt: "A sea change for Canada foreign policy as Freeland is replaced by a pro-Chinese Politico. Freeland's work in organizing the failed coup in Venezuela and supporting the MI6 Soros White Helmets in Syria became so well known that she became known as the Canadian Queen of Regime Change." Alexander, the new foreign minister, has a tough road ahead of himself. François-Philippe Champagne, get into this story.
Yes, I think this is actually an important change. And can I just talk a bit about Chrystia Freeland's background? I mean, she has been she's obviously connected to the Ukrainian community. She's partly Ukrainian. And she has been pursuing an extremely ideological neocon or neoliberal foreign policy for Canada. If you want to get an idea of the kind of foreign policy that a disciple of Hillary Clinton might follow, well, you couldn't do better than look at Chrystia Freeland's approach. I mean, she has been a zealous supporter, as you rightly say, of regime change. She has taken an extremely hardline position against China. She has also taken an incredibly hardline position against Russia. She apparently opposed very strongly Canada's previous foreign minister, who was a person called Stéphane Dion, who actually was talking about improving relations with Russia. She managed to engineer Stéphane Dion's sacking. And she has been right at the forefront and in the most passionate way of support for the Maidan regime in Ukraine, to which she is connected through her family, her family connections. So she has been an incredibly ideological, hardline foreign minister. It's a little bit like what would have happened if Susan Rice or Samantha Power had gone from the United States to Canada and had become foreign minister of Canada. And as you absolutely rightly say, at a time when Donald Trump has at various times talked about improving relations with Russia and has also sought to reduce US involvement in regime change adventures around the world, having someone like Chrystia Freeland in charge has grated intensely upon Donald Trump. Now, what's happened to Chrystia Freeland is that she's been sacked as foreign minister. She's been given this post of deputy prime minister in the Canadian government. Now, that may sound like she's been promoted to number 2. I'm not quite sure that that is actually what it means, in that Canada has a system modeled very much on the British system. And if you look at the sort of people who are deputy prime ministers in Britain, it's not actually a position of very great power. It sounds more impressive than it really is. In a Westminster-like, British-like system, the really powerful ministers are those who run departments, and the foreign ministry is obviously one of the most powerful departments. And it's very interesting to see who has taken her place, because the new foreign minister, Marc-François Champagne, is apparently someone who is very close to the former Canadian Prime Minister, Jean Chrétien. Jean Chrétien pursued a policy of good relations with China and Russia. He has criticized the hardline policies that Freeland has been advocating. He's been apparently concerned that Canada has been losing diplomatic influence as a result of those policies. And of course, he's also been concerned, both Champagne and Chrétien have been concerned, that Canadian economic interests have been suffering because Freeland's very strong policy of hostility to China has meant that Canadian businesses and big Canadian corporates have been losing out, or have been losing position in the Chinese market. And as I understand it, Chrétien openly criticized the decision that the Canadian government took to extradite the chief financial officer of Huawei to the United States during the height of the Huawei crisis in the summer. So I think this looks like Freeland being kicked upstairs, as we say in England. In other words, transferred to a position which looks important, but probably isn't. And the more realistic forces within the Liberal Party in Canada finally reasserting itself as Justin Trudeau's star starts to fade, following the various scandals that have racked and damaged Trudeau's reputation over the last year, and after the lackluster results that the Liberals under Trudeau achieved in the Canadian election, where they're no longer the dominant party, which they used to be.
Okay, Alexander, so do you think that Trudeau's been hit with a big dose of realism here, geopolitical realism, by making this decision with Freeland? And I say that, and I'll preface that by reading you the last paragraph of an article from opencanada.org. And they outline many of the blunders that Freeland did, like you said, with China, Huawei. They mentioned the falling out with Russia over Ukraine. I mean, the article specifically says that there was no reason to freeze all relations with Russia. That was just a big mess. They also mentioned Trudeau's disastrous trip to India in 2018, which, and I quote, set relations back with that country. And at the end of that article, Alexander, this is the quote: Canada foreign policy needs a good deal of realism. The question now is whether Trudeau and his new deputy prime minister are willing to let Champagne approach the file with fresh eyes. If so, let's hope that the new minister's pragmatic side will dynamize Canadian foreign policy and open a new and positive chapter in our relationships with the rest of the world. So that's from opencanada.org, Alexander. A good dose of realism.
Well, a good dose of realism, which is strongly needed. Of course, Freeland, who is the deputy prime minister, who's mentioned there, is never going to agree to that. That's not what she's about. But as I said, I suspect that parking her in this position of deputy prime minister, which comes with no very clearly defined responsibilities in the Westminster-style system Canada has, actually means that she might actually have far less power than that title implies. I think Trudeau also has less power than he used to do, because he didn't do well in the election. He has been tarnished by these scandals, and he did particularly badly in Quebec. And one of the interesting things about this is that the people who are rising, people like François-Philippe Champagne, and of course, Jean Chrétien. Jean Chrétien, by the way, was a very successful Prime Minister of Canada for 10 years, from 1993 to 2003. He had good relations with Russia, good relations with China, and he was able to keep Quebec politically loyal to the Liberal Party, which is obviously something that Trudeau cannot do. So there are undoubtedly, I am sure, internal issues that are partly driving all of this. And the Liberal Party is now having to look to French Canadians like Chrétien and Champagne to try and stabilize its vote in places like Quebec. But over and above and beyond this, I am sure that Canada, with its long and successful tradition of diplomacy, there must be many people in Canada who are saying, is this very ideological foreign policy, which has been foisted on us, how does it work for Canada? It might have made a kind of sense, if you like, if Hillary Clinton had won the election in 2016. But with Donald Trump in the White House, and with the world changing in the way that it is, and with the world becoming more diverse and multipolar, and with even like countries like India annoyed with Canada as a result of all of this, it's not making Canada stronger. It's making Canada isolated. And if you are familiar with the history of Canadian foreign policy, and whenever we discuss Canadian foreign policy, I come back to the fact that you come from a diplomatic family. You remember people like Lester Pearson and all those people who used to have huge prestige when Canada conducted its foreign policy in a radically different way, opening to all the world, seeking to build bridges rather than burn them. There must be people in Canada, both within the Liberal Party, both within the Canadian Foreign Ministry, people in general who say this foreign policy that's been foisted on us, this Clintonian foreign policy, doesn't work. Even the Americans have rejected it. We should too. Realism is what we need.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Canada's going to be left behind. I mean, when you look at the world right now and its leaders, it's Merkel and Trudeau. That's it. Those are the two remaining people of Obama's neoliberal globalist rat pack. I'm not saying the world isn't infested with globalists, from Lagarde to Tusk and Juncker and all these people. But as far as, that the glory days of Obama neoliberal globalism, it's Merkel, who we've documented many times is on her way out.
Absolutely.
And Trudeau, who's been weakened significantly. The rest of it, Alexander, is Modi, Putin, Trump, Xi Jinping, Salvini, Orban. I mean,
well, exactly.
Duda in Poland. Take a look at the world and how it's changing right now. Canada is going in the exact wrong direction.
Well, it has been. And I mean, at the end of the day, also, constructing your entire foreign policy around support for Ukraine, which is in effect what they've been doing, doesn't make a great deal of sense. I mean, Ukraine is not a great power. It's not an important power. What does Ukraine offer Canada? There are lots of people in Canada of Ukrainian origin, and obviously they have personal feelings with the country. So there might be some kind of domestic political sense in it. But ultimately, if you're looking at Canadian national interests, and that's what you are worrying about and thinking about, then Freeland's policies make no sense at all. And it is not surprising that finally people in Canada seem to be rebelling against them. Not before time, I would say. And frankly, I hope that this realism that you've been mentioning, finally and conclusively wins through, because I have warm feelings for Canada, and I don't want it to see it isolated in the way that it is, and with a foreign minister who, in several countries now, is actually unwelcome. Freeland is actually unwelcome in Beijing and in Moscow and in Delhi. The Chinese even recalled their ambassador from Canada, from Ottawa. They didn't even have an ambassador in Ottawa. Now that Freeland is gone and François-Philippe Champagne has been appointed foreign minister, they've decided finally to actually send an ambassador to Ottawa. So, you are the foreign minister who's welcome in the world's leading capitals, not just in Kiev.
Well said, Alexander. How do you have a foreign minister of such an important country like Canada not welcome in other countries? It goes against the meaning of the word foreign minister and diplomacy. I mean, it's an incredible statement as to how poorly a job Freeland did. And even on your point, Alexander, to close it out, even Ukraine decided to change by electing Zelensky. Even they've decided to move in a different direction.
Correct. Absolutely right. And I come back to this. Canada had this extraordinary tradition of diplomacy. I mean, to see Canada, as I said, give up on all of that, because Freeland, who I understand also believes herself to be some sort of intellectual on these kind of things, because she has some sort of hang-ups about Ukraine and wants to be part of a Hillary Clinton type diplomacy, which was rejected in 2016. We must never forget that. I mean, that seems to me to be so misguided and so wrong that I hope very much that we've seen the back of it in Canada and ultimately and eventually of her also.
All right, Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on that notifications bell to make sure you get notifications every time we publish a new video. Check us out on iTunes and on Soundcloud as well to get an audio copy of this video. And please donate to us, PayPal, Patreon, and Subscribestar. Your donation helps keep this channel up and running. And also look for our videos published on BitChute, which is the free speech video platform, and on Duran Video, which is our own platform where we post all our videos as well. And that's in beta mode, but we invite everybody to check that out. And on Telegram, we post everything that's going on in the Duran community. So please to subscribe to us on our Telegram channel. You can download the app, iTunes and Android, iPhone and Android. And Alexander, DRN20, 20% discount off all our merchandise on the Duran shop.
Indeed, so our wonderful things on the Duran shop. And we were talking about diplomacy. Well, of course, these people, that's to say the Russians, the Russian Federation, that's their emblem there. They know all about diplomacy. They would never make mistakes of not talking to people, even people they don't particularly like. You have to talk to everybody. That's what diplomacy does. And Vladimir Putin, when he drinks from his mugs and he goes to all kinds of places, he has this on his emblem. He was doing this at the G20 summit. He was conducting diplomacy, drinking from a mug, not as good a mug as this one, by the way, because we have the absolute best mugs in the world. I say that without qualification. Anyway, he was drinking from his mug and there was this emblem of the Russian Federation on it. And of course, it attracted a huge amount of attention. And actually, when I say we have the best mugs in the world, I absolutely mean it, because these are phenomenal, amazing, fantastic magic mugs. They've got 15-ounce capacity. They are beautiful coarse porcelain. They are extraordinarily strong. They're light. They're solid. It's strange how, they're both light and solid at the same time, but that's a sign of how well made they are. They'll never crack or chip on you. They will keep your tea, if you like tea like I do, they'll keep it warm. If you prefer beer or some cold drink, they'll keep that cold. They are absolutely amazing mugs, and you'll find lots of them on the Duran shop. Here's another one with the emblem of the Alpha Force, which is Russia's elite special forces unit, comparable to the Navy SEALs and the Delta Force and the SAS and people like that. So you'll find lots of mugs. You'll find fantastic shirts like the one I'm wearing now. This is an amazing polo shirt. I've worn polo shirts like this at really smart receptions in country houses in England when it's been hot. and they are actually very comfortable to wear in all sorts of weathers, and they are the epitome of smart casual. Or you can buy on our shop equally fine and elegant t-shirts like the one Alex is wearing. They're all 100% cotton. You see that we've all got our Duran double-headed eagles there. This is beautifully embroidered on this polo shirt, by the way. But you find short sleeve t-shirts like the one Alex has. You'll find long sleeve t-shirts which keep you warm in the cold winter nights, as I have often appreciated. And you'll find v-neck shirts, and you'll find hoodies, and you'll find hats, and you'll find stickers. And there are all these wonderful things on our shop. Perfect Christmas gifts. Christmas is coming up. Alex has told you about the discounts we are offering. So don't hold back. Help the Duran. Help yourself. Buy these great things. Buy them for your friends and your family as great Christmas presents. Alex will tell you how to do it, and he'll remind you how to get the discounts too.
Just go to the duranshop.com and put the code DRN20 at checkout. You'll find all the information in the description box down below. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Till next time, everybody, take care.